to Book Club no Kiseki. I am Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Houck.
And I'm Matt Jorgensen.
And the segment of Falcom's Kiseki series we'll be playing today is Chapter 3 of Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, which is ironically the 5th part of this game. Funny how that works out. Before we get started with all that, what's up, chicken butt?
I don't understand the question, and I won't respond to it.
Bernard, which of us is chicken butt?
Well, it's certainly not me.
Yeah, what's been up with you guys?
Well, I was telling y'all before we started recording, I just started playing Returnal, and I love it. You move so fast. You're this astronaut lady, and she's wearing an astronaut suit, but somehow she can just book it while wearing that astronaut suit.
Hell yeah.
That's my review of Returnal.
Move fast. I like it.
And I got my second shot of the vaccine, and I felt fine. I still took off of work because I had an excuse to do so. Mm-hmm. But now I'm almost protected. I just have to technically wait until it's been 2 weeks after I've gotten the second dose, and then I will be fully protected. As fully as you can get.
Well, you love to see it. And so the only person in the in the RPG book club greater family that needs to catch up is now Matt, because the rest of us are all good on the main pod. So hurry up, Matt.
As
Make
you'll
time
get
go
to
faster.
know me, as you get to know me, that's pretty on brand.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I just saw a fire truck.
What were you
and I
about
was
to
going
say?
to announce it. I saw a fire truck and I was going to announce it.
So we're recording a little bit late tonight because Scarlett is growing up, and therefore she thinks she knows everything, and she yells at us all the time. But tonight we did something smart and cool, and I wanted to bring it up, not to toot my own horn, but to help everyone else who has kids. But so when you have a young kid that's like yelling at you and doesn't want to do the thing, and you just want them to go the fuck to sleep, you instead of just like yelling at them and making them do it, or like, I'm going to put you in the room until you fall out and you can just scream and I'll just turn up the TV and ignore you, all those sorts of things that come naturally. Instead, you just explain like related consequences and like bargain with them. And so tonight we're like, all right, Scarlett, if you stay up a little later tonight, that means you have to go to bed early tomorrow, so you'll be rested. And she goes, okay, cool. And so we're, instead of being done at 8, we were done at like 8:30, 8:45 tonight. So highly recommend that if you have kids, to just not yell at them, which is real hard. It's real easy because they're real stupid, and yelling at stupid people is real easy to want to do. But yeah, that's my day. Y'all only get a day from me. If you want to know the rest of my week, you have to listen to the main podcast. But yeah, let's listen.
Wait,
to...
is anything going on with Matt other than seeing a fire truck?
Oh yeah, I forgot. I just figured that was his whole week.
I mean, we had a bridal shower and a baptism and looked at a house to rent, but really it was the fire truck that was the highlight. It was a pretty great fire truck. It had its lights a-going, but they were very kind and didn't have their sirens also a-going. No, but yeah, we had a bridal shower for me and the Becca's wedding sequel, which was weird because like we had one last year, but it was right as everything was locking down. And now we're having one right as everything's kind of starting to open. And, like, I was sitting in the corner because everyone else was vaccinated. So I'm, like, trying to stay as far away from them as possible. Which is what I do anyway. And then we looked at a house to rent. It is very small, but it is clean and comfortable. So we're probably going to be doing that come July.
Nice. Where is it?
It's on the other side.
Still out in the middle of nowhere?
I mean, it is out in the middle of nowhere, but Google deigned to put fiber down that road because it connects a real place with another real place. So we'll have real internet even though we're in the middle of nowhere.
That will work.
Yeah, like, I don't care if it's a shoebox. We're living here, honey.
Yeah, so my best friend Tara got married on the 1st, and they live streamed it to everybody. So we watched it on our big screen, and the quality was real bad because they were in the middle of nowhere and didn't have good connection, and so it was like watching on a flip phone type quality. It was garbage. And Summer was like, I finally get why the first thing you do when I show you a house on Zillow that I want to get is you Google what internet providers are available in the area, because you don't want this to happen for all of the things you do on the internet. And I'm like, it's true. I cannot deal with it. So we found so many great houses that we're looking at. We're like, oh, this will be perfect for us. And then we look, and if it doesn't have central air and it doesn't have at least 100 megabytes available for internet, we just move on, because we're not gonna purchase a house and live in squalor, and that squalor is not having central air or fast internet.
Yeah, I'd never realized how important that was until we moved to the Twin Cities for her to finish her college. I'm like, what? The game downloaded. Like, I went and got coffee in my book to sit and read while I waited for the game to download, and it finished before my coffee was. What is happening?
Yeah, it's I don't want to go back.
Going back is not good. Anyway, I think.
Anyway, let's. What was that?
I was just gonna say. I think
so that's it.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's listen to Silver Will from the soundtrack this week. It is the song that plays right at the beginning of this week when Agate is fighting the Doomaflachis, and it's a great track. So we're going to listen to that one and then dive into the plot. As soon as we load our game, we see Agate chasing the men in black. He easily catches up with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, and he kicks their asses. He asks them who they are and who they're working for, but then Chris Hemsworth comes out, and Agate asks him if he's in charge. He says, only of this particular scene, and asks Agate to overlook the incident. And Agate says, hell no. So Chris tells Will and Tommy to leave, and Agate jumps after them, but Chris deflects with his sword. Agate is like, I don't care if I kill you or them, so I'll just kill you. And they have a really cool fight with using sprite choreography. It's like real good, hella good. If you're just listening along because these games are super long and you don't want to play them, A, I don't blame you. B, go and look up this scene because it's real good. So Chris Hemsworth, he's the guy in the red mask, to break through my joke. But he says, wow, you're pretty good at fights, and I'm good at fights, so we should be friends. And Agate says, screw you, and cuts the man down dead. But then his body disappears. He was just using shadow clone jutsu, and he taunts Agate from the shadows, telling him to give up on emotions, and we fade to black. Title card, Chapter 3, The Black Orbment. We start the chapter with Estelle and Joshua waiting for Chloe on the bridge in Rouen. They say that Rouen is abuzz with activity because the mayor has been arrested, but basically no one was shocked that he was crooked. Chloe shows up, and so we all head out to the checkpoint. The checkpoint is at Air Lytton, the kick-ass waterfall where we had a side quest last week. Chloe takes us as far as the tunnel and says that she'll meet us in Grand Seoul when we get there because she has been, quote, running away from the reality of her situation and is headed to the royal capital to deal with it. We part ways and make our way through the tunnel. Part way, we run into a little girl who asks us if we saw any flickering lights on the way in. We say that we did, and she runs off. But Estelle and Joshua feel like something's probably up, so they run after her. We find her trying to fix the light, but there's monsters swarmed around her. She pulls out a fucking grenade launcher and blows them up, but it only makes them mad. I get flashbacks to Gunslinger Girl from high school, and those don't stop for the whole chapter. We fight the monsters and help her out, and she tells us that her name is Tita Russell, and she works at the factory in Zeiss. We say, well, that's where we're headed, so we take her with us. The cave we're in leads right to the basement of the central factory, and the exit to the city is on the first floor. The city is really big in the lore, but not too big in game, because most of the, able to remember where things are, real estate, whatever the fuck that would be, that to keep in the player's head was all spent on this huge 7-floor factory. And the central feature of the town is this huge escalator, which is incredibly impractical. It would not actually exist in the real world, but we're not in the real world. We're in a JRPG. And we make our way to the Bracer Guild, where we meet Kilika, who's the guild master for these parts. She is from Calvard and has bangs, and she's hot. She says that Jean already filled her in on everything, but Cassius is unfortunately not in Zeiss. She hopes that we'll stick around anyways and help with any guild matters that come up, and we say, of course, because we're trying to get our gold stars. We head back to the factory to meet with the factory chief, who's kind of the mayor of Zeiss, because everything revolves around this factory. And we're hoping to find something out about the Black Orbment. When we meet him, he, as with everyone this chapter, knows Cassius, and everyone this game, to be honest. He says he's actually the reason that Cassius has to travel so much, because Cassius is a local racer at the Roland branch, so there's not a lot of reason for him to constantly be away on business trips, but it's because he trusts Cassius the most. So when he has something sensitive, he calls Roland and gets Cassius assigned to the job. He takes a look at the Orbment, but it doesn't have a caliber inscribed on it. Caliber is a real English word that definitely does not mean serial number, but that's what they mean. Most Orbments have a serial number on it as part of the machining process, and this one does it even though it was obviously machined with modern tools, which is super weird. He goes to open it, but it won't open because it has no maintenance hatch or any seams whatsoever. It's kind of just one solid piece of metal, which is super weird. We're like, well, let's just cut it open. And he's like, I don't know. And we're like, well, maybe we can find whoever Professor R is, because Cassius in the note back in the day was like, get it in the hands of Professor R. And the chief is like, oh, that's probably Professor Russell. He's Tita's grandfather. He's a super duper famous orbment maker. And he was actually name dropped in the Liberal News in episode 1 back in the pre-prologue, which is a super nice touch. They do something really cool with that later, which is going to be in the extra shit chapter. But
can I just say, The note that was with the Black Orbment, they're using the first letter of people's names so as to not give away who they are. But then they drop that R's title is Professor. That narrows it down a fucking lot.
Yeah. Like, okay, so they're going to take this experimental orbment to some Professor R. Well, Professor E died in the 100 Days War, so the only professor of orbital technology left is Professor Russell. I bet that's him.
Yep.
So he calls for Tita to take us to go see her grandpa, and she takes us down to his house. There are some kooky old inventor man hijinks, and eventually we start talking about the meat of our issue. He takes the orbment and tries to cut it with his steel cutter, but it doesn't even leave a scratch. So he puts it in his big orbital scanner thingy, but as it scans, it causes a blackout in the entire city. Whoops. We terminate the experiment, and Russell says that this was because of the orbment's ability to block other orbital technology, as we saw before, and it was amplified and gone haywire by the scanner. Someone at some point says that it works like chain lightning, and so it went to the scanner, which went to all of the other garbage in his house, which went to the like electricity for the town, and just kept jumping through to knock everything out. He then says the worst part about it is that the scanner didn't even get a reading from it. He still has no idea what's going on. So the factory chief comes in and yells at us, but he understands that it wasn't really our fault. We end up staying the night at the professor's house trying to figure shit out on the orbment. The next morning, we go to report into the Guild, and Kilika upgrades our inquiry about the orbment to a full assignment so that we can focus on it with the Guild's permission. And so we then head into the factory where Grandpa Russell still has a lab set up. So instead of just his workshop, he's bringing in the big guns. He tries to cut into the orbment, but it's not working. It's completely stopping the orbital power of the circular saw he's trying to use, so he doesn't have any way to cut into it. But he's like, well, a combustion engine would totally work. And they're like, what's the combustion engine? And he's like, oh, combustion engine is a type of engine that is really, really bad. And if anybody in like the real world would have a combustion engine be the fuel for their industrial revolution, that would be a really horrible thing. It would just destroy the entire environment. But we don't have to worry about that here.
And they're really noisy and inefficient, and they just suck ass.
Yep. So they, of course, have one in the factory, so we go and get it. And the maintenance chief named Gustav says that he just got the machine, the engine back from the military, who were using it for some sort of research, so we came just in time. We take the engine back to the Russells and rig up the circular saw to the engine, and it destroys the saw blade in the process, but it does manage to start to cut into the orbment, so we are making progress on it. The chief comes in and is like, hey, Professor Russell, the water pump at the hot springs in the town of Elmo nearby has gone out. You personally made it, so do you want to go and fix it? And he's like, I don't fucking want to do any goddamn thing. You guys go do it. And so he sends us and Tita out there to go and take care of it. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Elmo is a cute little hot springs town, and it is exactly what you'd expect. The fan service episode. The Vita version has CGs that shows both Estelle and Joshua in sexy towels and steam, and it's fan servicey. It ends up being kind of cute, but like there is the aforementioned fan service part. But so while Tita is fixing the thing for the hot spring, there's some lady from Gransel who needs some help from monsters, so we go to save her, and it's Dorothy. She is here on assignment to get some pictures for the special edition liberal news that they're putting out for the Queen's birthday. And the monsters that are attacking her are the ones that attacked the mountain pass, And we, the viewer, know that they were already sent by the Black Mask crew because of the scene earlier with Agate, but Estelle and Joshua are just wondering what the fuck that could be about. We bring Dorothy back to Elmo, where Tita has fixed the water pump, and so we get the fan service episode. There's one important bit of character development in the middle of all of the character moments and hijinks, where Estelle starts to finally think about Joshua as a romantic interest against her will, because Tita assumes that they're already together, and instead of just brushing it off like she always has, the game flashes before her eyes, and she thinks of all of their near romantic misses that have happened so far, and she's like, what the hell was that about? But the spark has been ignited there. This nice quiet scene basically is the last plot meander for the rest of the game. Everything picks up and doesn't stop from keep happening for the rest of it. So I hope you're ready for that. The next morning we head back to Zeiss, and Dorothy comes with us. And on the way out, we run into a man from Calvard named Zane. We find out his name later, but his name is Zane. He is a real big, real burly dude. And if you really wanted to, like, we could hold hands. It'd be okay. Like, it's fine.
He is so large.
He is a very large man. I want him to just hold me and make me feel protected. He asks us how to get to Elmo, and he wonders something aloud about Estelle or Joshua, and it's hard to tell who it is, but he says never mind, and heads off. So we part ways for now. We get back to Zeiss, and the factory is on fire. Except it's not fire, it must be a gas leak, because none of the fire extinguishers have gone off, or the smoke alarms or anything, but there's smoke everywhere. So the HR person or whatever is doing the head count, and they're like, everyone's here, all full-time employees are accounted for, and they're like, what about like the part-time lecturers like the professor? And they're like, oh shit, he was here today, so we have to go in and save him. We run inside and find that all of the smoke is coming from these smoke canisters and is likely a cover for something. So we disable those and make our way up to the professor's lab, but he's not in there. But his saw is still running, and the black orbment is missing. Agate shows up to yell at us for being incompetent when we showed up to the crisis before he did, and also we were still too late. So he is at least more incompetent than us. But he also yells at us for bringing along a kid, and he doesn't seem to care that she fights with a fucking grenade launcher Gatling gun. Because he just assumes that she can't do shit.
Oh, that's just all children use that. That's perfectly normal.
Yeah. Yeah, every kid at birth comes out clutching a grenade launcher Gatling gun. So we hurry out to keep looking, and we find the men in black loading the professor into the elevator. The elevator closes before we can get there, so we have to run down the emergency stairs out of the factory, and there's no sign of them. The chief does say that some soldiers carrying a very large, conspicuous bag of luggage did just pass through. And so it's obvious that the men in black changed into army uniforms in the elevator to sneak away. We search the town for them, but we don't find them, so we call the Royal Army, and Captain Almathea, Richard's right-hand girl from way back in Chapter 1, she answers the call. She says that they've locked down the border, so at the very least, the kidnappers won't get out of Zeiss, so it's a smaller area for them to check things out on. Dorothy says that she snapped a picture of the men on their way out, and Almathea asks for that picture for evidence. Almathea tells Agate to stop investigating, and he's like, no fucking way, that's the plot of this damn game. She's like, fine, but just tell me whatever you find out. So we go to the Bracer Guild to report, and Professor Alba is there. He was, again, doing research on the Carnelia Tower, and he saw some royal soldiers being sus as fuck at the tower, and he overheard the word kidnap and escape route, and came to report it to the guild. Tita begs us to let her come with us, and Agate tells her hell no, and surprisingly, Estelle and Joshua both agree. Tita is distraught and runs off. We make our way to Carnelia Tower, and there we're attacked by the Doberman monsters from before, and Estelle and Joshua finally piece together that the Dobermans are related to the Men in Black, and Agate says that he's been hounded by the Dobermans ever since Cassius assigned him to this case. We climb the tower, and it's basically identical to the last ones, and on the roof we see the Men in Black with the professor. Agate says that they are under arrest, but they do not like that, and they fight us hard. I'm on easy, and I had a lot of trouble here. How is this fight for you guys?
It was pretty hard.
I remember it being hard way back when I played it. I think I spent like 2 weeks on it in yestertimes. But
I don't remember which fight it was that was really hard, but I got it on my first try, and which one I had to try a couple times.
Yeah, I remember when I played this on the first time, I was playing on the Vita, which doesn't have the if you die, you can try again, and it'll be easier system. And this is the one where I realized it didn't, because I died like 500 times. And I'm like, at this point, they should just die when the battle starts. Like, why is this not going? And that's when I found out that that's not in the Vita version. But, yeah, so they go down very slowly. And after the fight, they're like, fuck this, we'll just kill the old man. And we're like, aren't you after Professor Russell to, like, do something for you? And they're like, oh, you're right. Pocket sand! And they jump on an airship to escape. Agate's plan is to rush them before they can get on the airship. And we're like, that's a good idea. So we try to do that. But then a rocket-propelled grenade enters this role-playing game from off-screen. And it's Tita. She rocketed the airship, but unfortunately it didn't really do anything except keep us from making it to the ship on time. The Men in Black then turn and shoot at the obvious child, and Agate jumps in front of the bullet. On the Vita, you get a really good CG for him, like bent over protecting her. The black-clad men escape with the professor, so we have no choice but to head back to Zeiss for now. But first, Agate lays into Tita for not listening. Her showing up not only got the professor kidnapped, but got her shot at and him shot. He is rightfully angry, but she's bawling, so Estelle tells him to cool it. So Agate asks Tita, are you going to accept the fact that you can't help your granddad and give up? And she says no. So he's like, then shape up and get some courage. Take care of yourself before you try to rescue others. She promises that she will, and then there's a real cute scene of Estelle, Joshua, and Tita seeing through his roughness and realizing that he was just worried about Tita, and it's super cute. On the way out of the tower, we see Zane again, and he's like, oh, introduce me to your friends, the small child and the zombie man, because Agate is pale, sickly, and about to die. They turn to check him out, and he collapses, and it seems that the bullet he got hit with was poisoned, likely with a neurotoxin. Zane offers to carry Agate to the hospital in the factory, and we're like, how can we trust you? And he reveals that he is a bracer from Calvard. At the hospital,
I wish he would carry me to the hospital.
Right? Or just like a bed somewhere. That's fine. Any bed in privacy, or not in privacy. It's fine. So at the hospital, the doctor says that it's an advanced neurotoxin, and she doesn't really know what to do, but that Father Vixen, the priest, likely would. And as we remember from the side quests way back in the prologue, the priests are the ones who developed the medicine, so Father Vixen is likely an expert. So Vixen says that he can make an immune system booster that will help Agate recover, but of course he's out of the ingredients, so we have to go do a cave dungeon first. Zane comes with us. We get some moss. We fight a giant penguin. The whole thing is filler. They probably realized that this chapter is way shorter than the rest of them, so they added this part because it really does nothing for you. Back at the church, Vixen whips up the medicine, blesses it, and we take it back to Agate. He starts to recover, so the party stays with him in shifts overnight. In his sleep, he mentions someone named Misha. So the next morning, Zane leaves to go to Gransel, and he's like, hey, I'll see you there for the Queen's birthday. So Chloe said that earlier. He said that now. You can probably guess who our party is for the final part of the game. We report into the guild, and Kilika says that something fishy is going on. She's been trying to talk to the army over at Leiston Fortress the whole time and has gotten no responses. She thinks that there might be something weird going on internally in the army due to the PR nightmare that is the Royal Army, or the Royal Guard, apparently kidnapping the professor in Dorothy's photos. Speaking of Dorothy, she pops in, and she says that she went to the fortress to try and get her film back to no avail. So she just took a picture of the fortress for the paper. And in that picture is the airship that kidnapped the professor at the tower. We're like, okay, let's not beat around the bush and just go tell them that we have evidence and see what their response is. So we leave to go to Leiston Fortress.
I like how Estella's like, wait, if you look very closely, you can see a slight shadow in the top right corner, and it's just there. It's it's the most obvious feature of the photo.
In any other game, any other story, any other world, she would be the person on like the pretend news story. Like, if you look at this picture that looks like a thumbprint, but it's not, it's an alien.
It's like aliens. Just like, Nessie is real. Look at this Nessie. But we all head over to Leiston's fortress, and we tell them, hey, we're bracers. We're here to talk about the attack on the lab, so we want to talk to Richard or Amalthea. So the door open, and out walks Sid, making this a Final Fantasy game. Sid is the commander of the fortress, and he says that the intelligence division isn't actually here. We say, oh, well, we have a lead on the airship that stole the professor, and Sid starts to sweat and takes the bait. We show him the picture, and he's like, oh, this must be some plot by the Empire somehow, and he storms off. But as he's going back into the base, the lights flicker, and the big gate won't close, and they complain about that phenomenon again, meaning that the Black Orbment is probably here. So we head back into Zeiss to regroup, and we come to the realization that the Royal Guardsmen are being set up. Agate shows up, fit as a fiddle, and he says, well, then let's break in and save the professor, and it's really not that bad of an idea. Kilika is like, but we're bracers, so you can't arrest a government official because of the guild charter code rule number 3, but there is a loophole. Since they are endangering a civilian, we can go in and save him as an excuse. And even if this doesn't hold up in a court of law, you being junior bracers, respond to me and I'll handle it. So we have carte blanche to go and start a war. So we're like, okay, well, let's sneak on board the supply airship that Gustav uses and to bring stuff to and from the fortress, and we'll stow away like we did last time, bust out, and everything will be good. But that won't work because there are biosensors that they use to scan the cargo all the time that can even find like a mouse in like a whole pallet worth of stuff. But thankfully, part of our shenanigans earlier when we first met Professor Russell was that he was tinkering with a device that cloaks a person's life signs. So we use that. We all squeeze into a tiny box and make our way to the fortress. Right as our airship leaves, Dorothy comes up trying to tell us something before we left, but she missed us. She says that some members of the Royal Guard have been arrested for treason in Gransel.
I think it's important to note that Tita they tried to not take Tita along, but she was like, "But I'm the only one who knows how to use this thing that disables the biosensors.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't just teach you how to use it. Only I can do it." And they decide to take along the small, fragile child who does have very little HP.
Yeah.
So they decide to take her along.
Yeah. She does have, like, a good, like, character moment where she's like, no, I got to do what I can to do the right thing. And the right thing would probably be teach you how to use the thingy and stay safe. But whatever. She's with us anyways. So on the flight over, Tita asks Agate who Misha is, and he says that she's his kid sister who he never ever gets to see, and that's why he was so hard on Tita, because he saw his little sister and wanted to protect her. We get to the fortress, and the scan jammer Lammy works. Sid comes over to scan the cargo, and he sees nothing, so we're able to get out and do this set piece. We overhear from some of the guards that there is an emergency command structure in place, and that the soldiers are sick of answering to them. And we also hear that Almathea has shown up. The set piece itself is pretty cool. It's like a stealth mission where you have to avoid the dogs and soldiers and searchlights and find the professor. We do so, and we get to the research wing of the fortress, and the doors are guarded, so we try to find another way in, and we find a window, and we look through the window, and we see Richard, and he's evil. Couldn't trust him the whole time. We knew we shouldn't trust military cops, but we did for no good reason. It turns out that was a bad idea. He's with Russell, and he's demanding that he find a way to control the gospel, aka the Black Orbment. Russell says that he can't believe that Richard used to serve with Cassius, and Richard says, well, we're looking for Cassius, and we can't find him. So if you know anything about Cassius, you have to tell us. And Russell says, fuck you. And Richard is like, well, I mean, he's like, Cassius can't get his hands on this Orbment. It'll ruin everything. But I mean, even if he did, it would be hard for him to stop what's going on already. So Russell asks them what their plan is with the Orbment, and Richard is like, we'll find out with everyone else soon enough. Then our good boy Chris Hemsworth comes back in, the man in the red mask. He reports that the White Wings, the Royal Guards, have been, quote, caught in our net, and Richard is very pleased. Richard and Almathea board the airship to leave, so we take out the guards and storm in to save Russell. Russell says that he was unfortunately able to make a control mechanism already for the Orbment, so the bad guys can basically use its power whenever they want. They couldn't recreate it, but they can control it now. We take him and we go to leave, but as we leave, the soldiers that we beat up sound the alarm, so we have to sneak out. And if we get caught, it's not a fight this time, but you have to start over. It's pretty fun and not hard at all. If you hug the wall, you don't get caught, and the next door over on the wall is the one where you have to go to. It's not hard at all. We make our way into the command center and down into the prison, and Mayor Dalmore and the Capuas are there. There's a cute scene between our party and the Capuas, but we, of course, just leave them in prison to rot. But then we think about it, and the Capuas and Mayor Dalmore both were in cahoots with the Men in Black, and both of them were arrested by Richard. He's been fabricating his accomplishments to make himself look better and be better positioned for the coup that he's planning. We try to leave, but then we hear the guards are coming in to search the command center where we are hiding. Shit. But then we hear a voice call us from down the hallway, and it's Sid, and he's like, come into my office. lock the door. You'll be safe in here. He tells us that military command structures have basically all collapsed, and he's just trying to stay afloat, and he doesn't like all of the shit that's going on with the intelligence division. And he says that Richard basically is taking over everything. He arrested Commander what's-his-face from Bahaken Gate, Commander Morgan, that was his name. So he arrested him, so he's basically in control of all of the army right now. He also says a lot more stuff, but it's basically, like, not important.
They like to talk a lot in time-sensitive situations in this game.
I'm making sure there wasn't anything else, because these notes sure did take, like, all of my day today to write, and then only 30 minutes to talk about. But, let's see.
While you're looking for that, I will say, earlier during the scene where Richard was interrogating Russell, Sid was also there, and Russell was like, I thought you at least were better than this Sid, setting up Sid helping us later.
Yeah, I didn't remember that it was Sid that helped us when I was writing the notes, because I fast forwarded through all of the cutscenes when I was playing it last week. And so I had skipped over that because I was like, oh yeah, evil guy was evil, but he actually wasn't evil. He helped us out. So another thing that he tells us is that the White Wings, the guards, have been arrested for treason, just like Dorothy was saying. And Almathea, instead of taking that photo for evidence, like she said she leaked it out to the press with the idea that it was the guardsmen who did the thing, and not that they were disguised as guardsmen, but the guardsmen disguised themselves as the Men in Black. And so that's why they were arrested for treason. And everyone's like, well, that's not true. And they're like, well, it's what happened. There's no, all the people who know it's not true are basically in this room right now. And so Sid has an escape hatch that leads down to the aqueduct with a boat there waiting for us. He's like, take the boat, get out of here. I'll cover for you, etc. And they're like, well, what'll happen to you? And he's like, well, I'll probably spend 10 years in prison, but if military regulations won't forgive me, I think that Idios probably will. Just a cute line. So we get on the boat and we make our way out to the shore, and we're like, well, what do we do? And Russell begs us to go to Gransel and meet up with the Queen. And he wants us to warn her that Richard has the gospel. The gospel, when it was found, the intelligence division had it. Then it was taken from them somehow, probably Cassius, and then it wound up. They lost track of it with the when it was mailed to us, and we took it. But then because of the blackout in Zeiss, they knew it was there, and so they came to Zeiss and were trying to take it. And he says that the gospel is some religious artifact. He doesn't know exactly what is going to go on, but the intelligence division having it again is bad because they like the good guys stole it from him for a reason. And so I don't think he says anything important after that. So we say goodbye to Tita and Agate, and the chapter ends. It ends without us even getting our recommendation from the guild. Just fades to black and asks us to save.
Just go to Gransel and talk to the Queen.
Yeah.
You can just do that, apparently.
Yeah, these two junior bracers, both 17 years old, they can just waltz up and deliver important information to the Queen. So let's listen to some song, probably the Leiston Fortress theme, because it's a real banger.
I don't know. The Zeiss music is really good.
It is really good. So
that's just my opinion.
We'll probably do both of those. So we'll start with Leiston Fortress, and then we'll do Zeiss one for a minute. So, this week we get 2 new issues of the Liberal News. The first one, we can read Niall's story that he was working on about Cuscotopia, and it's super well written, but not really anything we didn't find out firsthand last week. There's also a piece on the crazy science that is the Orbital Calculator computer thing, which comes up later in the chapter, which is cool. The second issue is much more interesting. It has you get it after the factory is set on fire, and it has theories as who's behind the terrorist plot. They think that it's either the Empire or an ancient dragon, and the newspaper is like, these are plausible ideas. And then one other theory by probably a whistleblower, it's probably actually Sid that wrote this, says that there's a sect of the army that's trying to take over the Royal Guard and be in charge of everything. And Niall writes, that's impossible. There's no evidence of that. We would have seen that coming, which I think is hilarious. Then there's a really cool fluff piece about the wall around Gransel is an ancient ruin that they co-opted into being a defensive wall, which is pretty cool. This week we also got 3 chapters of Carnelia, and it's real good. And I started talking about them in here so that you guys wouldn't have to go to the wiki and read them. But after this week, you should go to the wiki and read them. They're like very well written, even though I'm spoiling what happens. So, the day after Carnelia killed those men who were after Tobias that we talked about last week, Carnelia says that they won't bother them anymore because the Jaeger Corps always sends out groups of 3. The Jaeger Corps is a legendary band of mercenaries that only the most elite are allowed to join. And while they're talking, Carnelia stops, looks off into the distance, and gives Toby his Orbment back. She then leaves without telling Toby what she's doing, but says, I'll see you tomorrow. And just as she leaves, 2 bracers come in and tell Toby to come with him. In the next chapter, the bracers interrogate Toby, and he plays like he was a victim of Sister Carnelia, so that they'll ask him lots of questions and he'll ask them lots of questions so he can figure out shit about Carnelia. They say that her name is Anne Selnate, which in chapter 1 or the prologue or whatever it was of Carnelia, he had read in that magazine or whatever, which made him remember this whole thing. And they say that she used to be a member of the Jaeger Corps, but her current affiliation is unknown. He plays along with their questioning and agrees to be held under supervision for a day to shake any of their suspicion on him. In his hotel room on the day he's supposed to leave, a maid comes in to clean his sheets. So he reluctantly gets up, starts to get ready, but then he sees 2 shadowy figures dart in across the hall and start fighting the bracers there in the guild. But he closes his door and is like, well, I'm safe from them. But then he remembers that Carnelia said that Jaeger Corps always fight in groups of 3. And oh shit, the maid, of course, was a Jaeger. And she comes from behind and tries to strangle him with the bed sheets. He can just barely grab his Orbment and hit her with a wind spell and launches her backwards, apparently out the window. Then in the next chapter, Toby picks himself off the floor, and so does the Jaeger maid. She actually wasn't sent through the window, and in fact seems completely unfazed by the spell she just got hit with. She is about to destroy Toby, but then Carnelia jumps in through the door, does an acrobatic fucking pirouette off the handle, and punches the Jaeger girl in the face, and then curb stomps her to kill her, which is gruesome as fuck. She motions to Toby and jumps out of the 2-story window onto the ground below, and Toby really has no choice but to follow her. They make their way onto a train bound for the Imperial City, and on board, Carnelia gives Toby a magazine that has an article in it that talks about Matthias, the guy that gave him the jobs, being murdered. Toby was barely 5 minutes out, and he from when it happened, so he's been like barely 5 minutes ahead of the Jaegers the whole time. If he lollygags ever, basically, he'll get got. And Toby's like, why me? And she says that the weird Orbment package that that he's been carrying for Matthias is actually an artifact. And Toby's like, so what? I smuggle artifacts all the time. I'm a smuggler. That's what I do. She's like, no, this one still works. This one is a super famous one that's been passed through many, many bloody hands, and then it was lost in the 100 Days War. So the person that's after the artifact hired the Jaegers to retrieve it, no matter the cost, but the church sent Carnelia to protect Toby and the artifact. And that's as far as we get this week, but it's getting really good. Other extra shit that we have this chapter is the computer in the factory. When we have to go and get the gas engine, nobody can remember where it is, which is dumb, and so you have to go look it up on the internet. And you can look up a bunch of things on the internet, and all the other stuff that you look up is tons of really cool world building. So there's a timeline of the Orbital Revolution, which is interesting. So So in 1154, Professor Epstein, who discovered orbital energy, he passed away in the country of Le Mans, which has not been mentioned yet. I bring this up because the new game, Kuro no Kiseki, Trails into Darkness, people are wondering, oh, will this one take place in Le Mans? So I feel this name will come up and be more important later. And I just happened to read that on a Reddit thread this morning, and then it popped up in this game. But so Professor Russell came back home after that, and he was like, hey guys, orbital energy is a big deal, and nobody cared. So he joined up with the Clockmakers Union, and he worked with them, set up the first bit of orbital engineering in Liberal. The king, who was the ruler prior to the current queen, he sees what they're doing, and he infuses a shitload of cash into the factory to accelerate the development of orbital arts. Then in 1168, airship travel was invented, and by 1175, the Airbus style ships that we use currently were installed. Then in 1187, a Liberalian cruise liner, the Eterna, sinks in Calvard waters, and the prince named Judas dies at sea. That sounds like a juicy political plot thread that may come up later. So far, we don't even go to Calvard yet, so I have no idea. But then in 1192, the 100 Days War breaks out, and Professor Russell develops the fighter plane to turn the tide and win the war, which brings us to 1202, which is the current year, because I'm sure that all of us forgot what the current year was. I know that I did. There are also a lot of detailed notes on the science behind all the tech in the game, which is pretty cool, if a bit redundant. It mentions that the clockwork inside of the Orbment is what helps generate and channel the energy between the septium and the quartz, and it says that the energy that is expended gradually is restored over time, so it's a perfect green energy, and gas sucks. Another cool bit is that the septium is actually a name for the kind of gems, and there are 7 different colored ones, as we know from mechanics of the game, but they're not all just quartzes doing whatever. Septium is it's like a bunch of different kind of gems, which is kind of cool. The side quests this chapter, there is a really cute side quest where Estelle gets to run some QA on the new Strega shoes, and it's filled with a whole bunch of cute moments of her fangirling over shoes. There is a quest to get a tomato for a chef who sucks, but the reward is the recipe for a tomato sandwich that heals 40 CP when you use it. Not HP, not MP, but your crisis points or whatever the fuck it's called.
Craft.
So, craft points.
Arts and crafts is this game's mechanics.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't even think about that until now. So, 40 CP is a lot. And so, if, say, on turn 1, you get Estelle to use a sandwich on Agate, and then Agate uses his craft that gives him 60 CP, he can use an S break before his second turn. So the sandwich is worth it as a reward.
I'd like a tomato sandwich.
Me too.
A little mayonnaise, a little salt.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good.
Sounds delicious, to be honest. There's a side quest where we can go to help out a fellow bracer whose car broke down. We fight some monsters and then do nothing for it, but later we can talk to this dude at the factory who used to be with the vehicle department, but he currently has no idea where they keep the engines anymore. So we go on a bit of a goose chase to eventually find one and bring it back to them. Then there's a quest at the Wolf Gate, which is a completely optional area because it's the border with the Calvard Republic. You don't ever go there in the game unless you want to do the side quest. There's a guy there who has whose girlfriend is Faye, the girl who got us gasoline in the main plot. They're having a rough patch, so he wants you to bring a letter and gives you some money to bring her a gift. He doesn't actually give you enough money, and he does several other dirtbag boyfriend things, and so we probably shouldn't have helped him win Faye back. Then there's another side quest where you help the doctor at the factory recover some cigarettes that were confiscated because the factory is a smoke-free zone. The crime was witnessed by the hospital's cat. Thankfully, we have a cat to English dictionary, so you can actually translate what's going on. The side quest is amazing. You use this kitty to solve mysteries. The translation bit is just bonus. You don't have to translate it. You just can translate it because that book exists. Everything he's saying is just like, who are you? It's in here. I'm tired. Things like that. But the fact that like it all makes sense if you read the translation is just great. At the end, you find that it was Chief Murdoch who's the smoker, and he's just chain smoking because everything is super fucking stressy. Another cool little thing, it's not a side quest, it's just some extra shit that's going on. If you rest at the inn in Elmo, Matilda throws in a free visit to the baths, which gets you 200 CP. So if you don't mind running all the way to Elmo before every major story beat, you can cheese most boss fights by just unleashing your S breaks all the time, which is pretty great. And then the last cool thing is kind of a culmination of a bunch of small cool things that I didn't notice until I was reading the Let's Play to write my notes, and he brought it all up. So there's a crazy amount of foreshadowing that the Black Mask people were actually part of the military, and they actually worked for Richard all along. But we gloss over all of it because that's how good foreshadowing works. So back in Chapter 1, they realized that the Capwas must have had an inside source in the military after Morgan arrests them. And it's like kind of implied that it might have been Morgan himself, but the plot thread was never actually resolved in that chapter. Then at the end of the chapter, when Richard shows up to steal our thunder, he does so without any explanation of how he found out where anything was. We only found it because we stowed away on their airship, and we were one step ahead of the military the whole way. But of course, Richard knew because it was his people the whole time. And there's another super subtle piece of foreshadowing. So when Estelle finds Joshua's book, The 100 Days War, back at the fishing place, whenever that was, if you read it, it mentions that Leiston Fortress is on the bank of Lake Valyria, and right after you read it, the special ops people meet up with the Capuas on the shore of Lake Valyria, coming in on a boat, presumably straight from the fortress. So there's a lot of like tiny little bits that I, of course, did not realize. But this game is really well written in regards to that. Like, if you do a lot of reading and paying attention and reading the newspapers and reading the books and stuff like that, then you'll start to piece all the things together really early, which is pretty great. But let's listen to the Zeiss music and then talk about our memorable moments. Memorable moments. Do you guys have any?
I really liked the hot springs scene. It was cute.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just like how it all culminates with Estelle runs into the outdoor bath, which she didn't see the sign that it's unisex, and Joshua's there, and Estelle screams, and it's all very good. And then I like the part where the woman who owns the place is like, "Oh my gosh, you nearly gave me a heart attack. You scared everyone." What the fuck? Just someone saw you naked. Who the fuck cares? Get over it.
Right.
So I really like that scene. And I also really liked the giant penguin fight.
Yeah.
It was really hard and really long. And as you're going through the dungeon, there's all these penguins of different colors that all have a different gimmick to them. And then when the giant penguin shows up and you enter the fight with it, there's one of each of the penguins with it. And you're like, oh, fuck. I got a lot to deal with. I really like that fight.
Yeah. It was a great fight. Plot-wise, completely total filler. Not important at all.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah. I was going to try and defend it for a second, but nah, never mind.
Anything else, Bernard?
No.
What about you, Matt?
I'm going to mention the penguin fight. I feel like it's the part of this game, other than the like vibing with friends part, that I really like. That's like a mechanical showcase, or it felt like a mechanical showcase to me, and it felt really cool to actually like, it's a puzzle and you're putting the pieces together. It just felt really cool. But the one that wasn't mentioned, because I also was going to mention the hot springs, because it is kind of cute, and because I had accidentally muted myself during that section, is the reminder that those two aren't actually related. I just fiddle with this button. It's terrible. The factory. I love the crazy old man and his dumb experiments. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime there is a semi-bald, crazy old scientist in a video game, because it's always that same design, it is one of my favorite things, because it's going to be something silly, and you're going to blow up part of the building, or the town, or shut the power off, or all three, and it's just good.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Anything else?
That's what I got.
All right. I have a couple choice lines that I had saved. So when you first meet Tita, she's like, "Oh, do you understand what like why it's important that I fix this light?" And Estella's like, "Yeah, sure, absolutely." And Tita's like, "Oh, okay. So, like the reason it's so important is that each orbment has a court circuit inside, and without it to regulate the flow of power, the orbital energy has nowhere to go. Eventually, it's likely to overload and blow out. Happens all the time with highway lights." And then Estelle's like, "No, never mind. I give up. Like, I don't want to. Just stop talking." And I thought it was really good. Like the text box is like the entire screen, and Estelle's text box is on top of it.
That?
And
It's so good.
it's so good. And then some choice Dorothy lines, because she doesn't do a lot plot-wise, but she does a lot of being Dorothy around us. So, I mean, I guess she is kind of the crux of the plot at the end, but she doesn't, like, hang out with us for very long. But so it's when she's getting attacked by the Dobermans. She's like, "Come on, puppies, can't we talk about this? I don't think I'd taste very good. I mean, I sleep at least 12 hours a day, and I eat lots of veggies, and my skin's super smooth." And then the dogs like growl and get closer, and she goes, "Wait, does being really healthy make me seem yummier?" And I really liked it. And then in the hot springs, the thing that kicks Estelle off to think about Josh romantically is Tita's like, "Can I ask you something?" And she's like, "Okay, dish. You can ask me anything." It's like, "Are you and Joshua married?" She goes, "I'm sorry, I toned out for a second. What did you say? Are you and Joshua married?" She's like, "No, God, no." And then, of course, it goes from there. But then after they get over seeing each other naked, they're all hanging out, and Tita is like, looks a little sad, and she's like, "Well, what's going on?" She's like, "Well, I don't have any brothers or sisters, so seeing you guys pal around, like, I don't get to do that." And Estelle's like, "Well, I've got an idea. From now on, I'll be your big sister, and Joshua can be your big brother." And it's super cute. And then my final one is another Dorothy thing where I don't even remember what we were going to do. We were about to head off to do some plot thing. And Dorothy's like, "Would it be okay if I came with?" No. They just don't even let her finish. They just say, "No, stay back." And she's like, "Well, gee, thanks for taking the time to think about it." And it's good. Love Dorothy. Stan Dorothy forever. But that will do it for this episode. This series, as always, could not happen without the support of our Ko-Fi backers, so thanks to everyone who has been supporting us. If you're listening to this in the after times on the podcast feed, you can come join us over at www.rpgbook.club, where you can get access to these episodes a month before everyone else. Next episode, we will be playing the final chapter, which I forget what it's called, but it's the final chapter of the game. And it might get too long, and I think there's an epilogue, so we might have two episodes left in this game. We might finish it up next time. Depends on how long and crazy it gets. But for Book Club no Kiseki, I have been Sam Ullman.
I'm David Bernard Hauk.
I'm Matt Jorgensen.
Adios, amigos.